All right, we're on the air, folks. Welcome to, I guess, Terry, the first Search Geek speak in a long time.
Yep,
Definitely this
over a
year,
year.
first one. They kind of pulled us back in, unfortunately, folks. It's that RankBrain thing, and all of our guests here today have had the joyous experience of being pulled into this again after it was silently talked about 8 months or 6 months ago. I don't know. So RankBrain is the topic, folks, but we kind of discussed this a few privately on a handful of occasions over the last weekend. So I think Bill had one of the more interesting angles that I think has not been talked about, Bill, I guess we could say, which is the whole AI element of this. And this is, again, this goes beyond RankBrain. It goes into everywhere. You know, I've seen other patents and papers of different things they're doing, machine learning, and obviously that's going to attach itself to, the AI element. So Bill, tell us what it is that we aren't catching, or at least not thinking about around this whole topic.
We don't quite know what we're measuring, what we're ranking, what we're considering in the analysis that machines are taking. They're supposed to be self-learning, but there's that story you told recently, David, about Google engineers saying we don't quite know what they're ranking, but we'll look at it after the fact and figure it out.
Right. And the Google employee in question was so happy that his boss was like that. But is that a good attitude to have?
Right. So I told you this morning I came across a new patent application from Google on AI.
Oh, wait. Just before you go, Bill. Bill, I just got an analogy we could use that encapsulates what you're saying there. Yeah, your car might run off the road and go over that cliff and kill you, but we'll figure it out after that happens.
So this new patent uses human biometrics to help rank results. And what it does is it watches through the camera in your phone as you do searches to see if you're scowling or frowning at certain results that you get. And it tries to build a training model based upon responses like those frowns and those scowls at the search results you see. And it might demote some results based upon if a lot of people respond emotionally in some way to those results. And that's, if Google introduces that, are they going to tell us that's a ranking factor?
It's worrying, isn't it? It's good news for Larry Kim, because as everyone laughs at the stuff he writes, Google will think it's good.
Just kind of get one of those interview conversations.
Might think it's a joke, Ammon.
Well, a lot of Xbox
idea
users,
is certainly
a lot of
something
Xbox.
So one of the things that happened after Google acquired DeepMind, as they were acquiring DeepMind, the purchase agreement or the merger agreement included Google putting together a board of ethics around artificial intelligence. And supposedly that may have happened, but they haven't told us like who might be on that board or what that board is actually doing, if it's deciding anything. That acquisition happened in November of 2014, so it's been a while. In the meantime, we've had a group called The Future of Life that came out with an open letter to the tech community, and people like Elon Musk have signed it, saying that we're going to take certain steps in the development of and how we monitor and measure and track artificial intelligence and its use. And it's worth reading, this Future of Life letter, because it's got a lot of thoughtful stuff on it. And we've done don't seem to have gotten some of those warnings when it comes to things like RankBrain. We're told it's the third most popular signal when it comes to understanding.
Third most important, but again, it depends who you ask. You know, if you ask Greg Corrado, it's definitely. If you ask someone else on the Google team, well, no, my department's more important, but, you know, it depends which Google you're talking to.
And, of course, it was contributing to results rather than ranking.
Direct scoring factor, something like that, yeah.
Right, so
SEO industry.
Use your words carefully, yeah. So we've seen papers, we've seen articles come out, 57 different ways to optimize your website according to RankBrain. And
we're up to 57 now? That's not bad. We'll get up to that 200 in no time.
Lining people's pockets with money. You know, if you do CPC and you're suddenly overnight an expert on SEO and artificial intelligence, and all of a sudden your software is the solution to everything, it's wonderful.
Yeah. It's one of those things.
I'm currently building my RankBrain tool.
Even that idea, you know, machines running away with us, and you know, your analogy of it going off a cliff. Well, do you know what? Your ordinary car can lose control. What you try and do is understand stopping distances and get feedback on the way along. You know, ideally, Google are looking at results and where it's heading with enough stopping distance. Of course, what we are worried about is, look, we haven't done this before. We don't know what a safe stopping distance is. And that's why, you know, the idea of an oversight committee is so important. Just because there's a real hot competition right now. Google,
well, we got to talk before the show
Facebook.
about that Microsoft bot on Twitter, Ammon. Remember the Microsoft bot on Twitter? How could any of this possibly go wrong?
I'm almost wondering if that was a stunt, because it did get them a lot of publicity, and immediately, oh look, here, you can have the software to write your own bot because you can't possibly do a worse job of it than we did. You know, there was almost that to it.
Well, you know, there's another analogy there too. Back when the nuclear weapons were first developed, they were used to end the war. Okay, they succeeded in ending the war. We didn't manage to control them. Now we don't even know where all the ones that disappeared when the Soviet Union broke apart ended up. So you've got something now that, because of whatever reasons, whether it be greed or desire for power, a deadly weapon is out there and can achieve somebody's goal. They don't give a damn what the end result is or how it's used. They're going to use it to their own advantage. Okay, so why is AI any different? You know, an ethics board is a great idea, but all they're going to be able to do is say, we're not going to allow this to go beyond X point, and we're going to say that nobody should. But how the hell do you enforce that? So it can be as dangerous as human nature wants to make it.
Corporation can't have ethics.
Well, that's
this is where I was going. The amount of competition between those companies at the moment means there is real pressure on them to be the first to launch, to be the first to get this new headline and this new thing, because where future scientists are going to go is going to depend partly on, you know, which of those companies they see as the most advanced and the one with the biggest opportunities. You know, we already know that Microsoft struggle a little to get the same kind of headliners that Google might be able to, because Google is seen as so dominant that if you want to really work in the cutting edge of a search, you probably want to work at Google. Even though Bing have some phenomenal work, they've got some great patents, and do you know what? They've done it with an awful lot less data. There's still that thing. I think that the amount of rush to market at the moment and the investor pressure is why we really need the oversight committee. It's not the scientists, it's that commercial pressure to launch something before it's fully safe.
Agreed. And there's always somebody that's going to try to do something to their own advantage, and the hell with everybody else. That's just human nature, unfortunately.
So
Jay,
where
I
are
think,
where
go
are
ahead,
the,
Bill. Sorry.
yeah, where are the people who worked on RankBrain at now, David?
Facebook. Gotta wonder what they're doing over there with all that information.
Oh, they don't have any information, Dave.
No, there's nothing at Facebook, right? They don't sell that stuff, and gotta, you know.
They're
Anyways, yeah, a lot of people, as for to get us little taste of RankBrain before we're gonna keep you people waiting, but yeah, a lot of the scientists that actually were, some of them barely at Google. I think Doc, you tracked down the one guy who was there 4 months, and they've been on Google Brain projects, which is the AI side of things and whatnot, and now they're at Facebook, and so you gotta kind of consider why they're pulling out all this talent over Facebook, and as Bill's trying to do is with the red flags is, you know, these same people that are thinking about that are now over here looking at your really personal social data and thinking of ways to use that against you, meaning advertising, sorry, but that's what they're doing, so. Yeah, one can only wonder what's going on over there, man.
Yeah, and
Right,
it's one of
so
those things. Everyone is in this race to develop new ways of using it. It is, you know, we sometimes talk about disruptive technology. AI is massively so. The potential of AI is huge because you suddenly can have systems that are smarter than we are. Instead of things that are devised by the smartest of us, things that are actually way out smarter than us, that analyze data in ways that no human would ever think of.
I was a little bit concerned. DeepMind came out with a paper called Teaching Machines to Read and Comprehend. They are using CNN and the Daily Mail as their seed sets of information about entities in the world and how they interact and how they grow and learn, and this is how they're learning about the world around us.
The Daily Mail?
Daily
yeah,
Mail.
no, I read that paper, Doc. I don't know. I think one of Bill gave it to me, but yeah, I know. Yeah.
I wouldn't put that
Well,
in
not, it was just a
my
research project.
parakeet's cage.
Right. It's not based upon the quality of the content, but rather the formatting of the content.
Thank God for that.
It's supposedly written in a way that makes it easy for a machine to parse and read and understand the parts of words and so on involved.
Well, there's a vote of confidence for that site.
I'm surprised they didn't.
We rate it in grade 6. We rate it at grade 6 level over here. Google likes it.
It's another thing of brands changing over time. There was a time when the Daily Mail was one of the highest rated for investigative journalism. You know, it was right up there. There were a couple that actually put more into investigative journalism, but they tended to be very much of the tabloid sort. They weren't as careful with their facts. They would sensationalise more. At one time, Daily Mail was the highest rated, but of course I'm going back to like the 1930s and so on.
Yeah, that's been a long time.
So, okay, so our first advice to everyone is to think about this on a larger scale as far as where the future lies when you start to get into artificial intelligence paired up with machine learning. You know, I remember back when personalized search came out, one of the arguments was that will this take away the ability for Google to surface alternate points of view, meaning if I'm a Christian, is going to show anything when I, you know, that's Buddhist or something. If I believe in this, you know, if I'm a Democrat, is it going to show me stuff from, you know, from the others? Are you going to stop seeing? And I remember people used to talk about that. So this becomes that almost on an extension in that will these kind of algorithms in this kind of situation limit us from learning new things we may have not have thought of or may have not agreed with in the past just because it thinks, you know, meaning if I'm evolving, is it evolving with me?
Well, I think if their AI development doesn't go the way of Microsoft's recently aborted test and go just totally off the course, then I think that to me it makes something like sentiment analysis a lot more possible down the road. You know, AI can lead to sentiment analysis within a certain margin of error. But even you and I, as human beings, can misjudge someone's sentiments. You know, so there's, for instance, the AI gaming judge that was set up with millions, literally millions of players. They got that down to a 1 in 5,000 error rate. Now that wasn't on sentiment analysis, but 1 in 5,000 is phenomenal and far surpasses what a human judge would be able to do. So to me, it makes it look a lot more feasible.
Yeah. I think one other thing about the broader context is this. I'd say that machine learning and AI both just exacerbate and accelerate some of the things that we'd already knew about search and maybe had dismissed or maybe were still worried about. There's been a lot of concern over the past 15 years about the level of power Google has as a gatekeeper of information, because most people will turn to Google and not question second sources that they don't find through Google. Its power as potential propaganda is immense. And this is one of the reasons why there are still several countries that do not trust Google, that don't really want an American-owned company having this much power. And it's why some of the Asian market really don't trust Google themselves, the actual people. Machine learning makes it more possible for the information presented to play to our biases and accidentally become the greatest propaganda machine of all time. In the same way that we all know the media industry has, well, it's gone to crap because they're always playing to the stats. What gets the most views? What gets the most conversation instead of what educates or informs well?
I would say history-wise, if you look back when personalization first came in, I know on the regular, Steve, Dave, and I have talked a few times about how the search started to reflect our own ideas and beliefs to where Steve and I thought we could no longer get an unbiased. It was going to be biased by what they had already kind of figured out about us. Like all I saw was conservative points of views on anything to do with economics. Like I may be a socialist, but economics, I'm definitely conservative.
All right, so let's work our way. We're 20 minutes in, so let's work our way backwards as we have been. What the hell? Everyone came here wanting to know what it was, and then we'd babble later. So we're actually working backwards, folks. So I think the next thing we have to deal with is the word expert. Yeah, Bill had his own reservations, and those on the event page and watching right now, you can go check it out. And even myself, I've run into literally threads on various communities on everything from how to optimize for RankBrain to should it be in client reports and some other crazy theories. So I'm going with no personally so far. I don't really see this as something that, again, this is more for me understanding the evolution, and we know so little, so I don't think, I agree that there's no experts. I'm sure there's few experts there. You could ask John Mueller and he'd say, well, I'm no expert, but, with literally, and he works there. So yeah, any of these posts out there, anything being written that's anything more than conjecture, or repurposing of the 4 or 5 statements Googlers are made, and that's about it, And these 4 or 5 statements have been blown up and everything else. So no, folks, none of us know, and these folks around me have spent a lot of time thinking about these things. So,
as a former administrator of a forum on the web that dealt with SEO, it used to be not uncommon to run across people with names like SEO expert or SEO guru who were anything but. Their ideas on what to name themselves wasn't reflective in their actual knowledge, by long shot in many cases. when things like RankBrain came out, the number of articles about RankBrain and people writing pages about RankBrain and how much they knew about RankBrain and what you should do was amazing. You know, same thing with Hummingbird. I don't know how many articles they came across about Hummingbird within the first week of it being around, but a lot of people were experts on conversational search and semantic search, and most of them had no idea what the word semantic meant, which is kind of ironic.
We've always said in this industry that generally somebody's experience and repute is in inverse proportion to the amount that they put into their title and description on social media sites. You know, if their name has expert in it, they are pretty much the exact opposite. If their name tends to have guru or ninja or anything like that, you know, dismiss them. You know, this is somebody who their idea of being able to show expertise is only to stick it in their name. They have no other means of doing so.
You know, and you know, I think this is beyond just RankBrain, this thing, but you know, it's links and everything else. That you know, this is often what kind of sullies our name. That it never gets to the business owners enough. That the people are selling these kind of services and everything else. And, you know, it does dirty us all, I guess. It paints us all with that same brush at times. And but no, yeah, I don't think there's anything close to anything for RankBrain anyways. I don't think this is something that you are making, you know, actually, if you're already crafting relevant content that is contextually on point and so on and so on, I think, you know, you're fine. You know, so when you read into this, you know, I've heard everything from Googlers saying it was early or spring 2015, and you know, the one back last fall said for a few months, which puts you back into the summer. You know, I generally, someone says what I do for RankBrain, I just say, is everything going well? Are you increased month-over-month organic traffic? Yes, you're already there. You've done a great RankBrain job. Go pat yourself in the back and get back to work. You know, it's like, it's again, that whole time difference from last October until when this all popped up again. You know, if it's already been in there for 6 to 8 months or almost a year, who knows, depending on who you listen to. If what you're doing is working, then you've already done it. You are, you know, you've managed, and this is the big question that keeps getting asked about how do you optimize for it, what do you do for it? It's like, well, no, if what you're doing is working, you're already doing it. Congratulate yourself, you know, because I don't think it's, you know, it's not really going that way. You know, you're not traveling that direction. This isn't like stop keyword stuffing. Well, you probably wouldn't, but that's different advice altogether.
You know,
it's good advice, though. Sorry.
Timeless, Eric. Timeless.
Yes. I had a client yesterday.
Eric, I'm assuming you've been getting these you know, how does one optimize for rank? How are you dealing with that question when you're into it?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, Doc, but well, probably not much different than you, Dave. It's like, okay. Well, in fact, I did a presentation on RankBrain at SMX West, and I had the grand slide at the end. It said, so what's the impact on SEO? And I said, well, nothing, more or less. And that was the next slide, and that was it, right? And then I tried some weaselly advice like, well, okay.
You've got to learn, Eric. You've got to learn to drop the mic. Just, you know, put that slide up, drop the mic, walk off the stage. That's it.
Yeah, totally. I should have done it that way. But then I followed up. Well, okay. Look, if you hadn't already decided to write natural language for users, maybe you ought to start doing that now. And that was about it. But you know, that's not really RankBrain advice anyway. But you know, that's kind of where I left it.
Yeah, and that's exactly
I read one of your articles. You mentioned talking to someone at Google. I want to get this cleared up because I'm just curious. It's been stated far too often that RankBrain is only running on 15% of queries, but my understanding is that it's running across everything, but it's most effective on that 15%. Is that?
Yeah.
You know, what is the? You know, you mentioned an article you wrote.
Yeah, I had an email exchange with a person that I can only refer to as a Google spokesperson. I can tell you it wasn't Gary Ish, but they told me that they really don't have this concept of a ranking algorithm that runs only on a portion of the queries. It runs on everything. It's just if it's a very, like if it's a single word query, it has no impact. But it's not like it doesn't run on everything. And I know those distinctions might not mean a lot to a lot of people out there, but on the other hand, if you're watching this particular Hangout, then that distinction probably does mean something to you.
Yeah. To follow up what you were saying about the changes being no changes, that's absolutely right for anyone on this panel. But I think there are still a lot of people who didn't adapt for Hummingbird, and this amplifies the things that we said then. The big changes are brand is more important than it used to be, because reputation is going to play into the way that Google sees you as an authority or not when it's rewriting queries and has a wider range of possible answers. Then obviously repute becomes the thing that sets one apart when suddenly the corpus of possible results is 3 times what it was for this query. Second, there were people that were targeting long tail keywords. This was advice in the past, it worked in the past, it's been getting less and less effective. Hummingbird was a major nail in its coffin, and RankBrain has hammered that home. I would say that it has fixed one little part with that. One of my criticisms at the time of Hummingbird was, look, there's a difference between a tailored suit and a bespoke suit. There's a difference between a fitted suit and a tailored suit. Sometimes the exact wording we use is really important, and RankBrain is able to make that kind of distinction better than much of what was in play in synonyms at the time Hummingbird came in. I think Hummingbird sometimes.
Well, again, to me, I've been saying that. To me, I see a sense that it's another cog towards proper natural language processing, which of course takes you to, voice search and things of that nature. And Google's whole lean on, mobile smartphones and the assistant and all this kind of stuff. Once you start to vector things and you start to use faster processes like they seem to have with this, again, I can't help but think that down the line this is turning into voice search, and things that, again, back to Hummingbird, which is conversational search and things of that nature, right? To me, this, again, it puts that lean on the evolution, which is what I tend to try to learn from this more than what is RankBrain actually doing, because that's like saying, what is semantic analysis actually doing? I don't know. I know a dozen different ways that Google's looked at in the past. Which one and how they're using them doesn't really matter. I'm trying to understand this evolution where we're, and I get the sense that RankBrain, in a way, is again, like you're saying, moving more down that conversational search path, which of course takes me to voice search down the road.
Yeah. I think the long-term evolution is the one that we always see. Technology gets to the point where it tries to disappear. Google searches, it used to be quite a complex business to get a search right. Any SEO who was around 10 years ago learned to be an expert at using pluses and minuses and quote marks and all kinds of really structured searches to get at the exact thing they want. And by and large, over the last 10 years, it's consistently got better at delivering the right results with fewer words, without advanced search parameters. Those are still there for some things, but it tends to be only really hard research. For most things, search is getting better. And yes, eventually Google want you to be able to just speak out loud, do any sentence, and Google will find what you're looking for.
Right, you said something that I really liked, Ammon, on one of the hangouts that we did with Andre from Google. We were talking about Panda at the time, but the comment you said was, well, the practical impact of considering it part of the core algorithm was if it reached the point where most of the people around had forgotten how it worked. I thought that was a really insightful comment, because it's like, okay, it's just sort of part of the landscape now, and right.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. It goes from adaptation to adoption, and once something is fully adopted and we don't think about it, it's pretty much right. There's still Google engineers tweaking a lot of things every now and again, but most of the things that they would call core are the things that simply nobody's really bothered working on because it's working well.
Right.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Wow. Just looking through the questions in the Q&A. Sorry, I jumped on late, but when did we? Oh, sorry. Okay, when did we jump to conspiracy theories versus what RankBrain is and how it works from a search perspective? Oh, okay, that was Frank. Yeah. They're not even conspiracy theories, though. They're buzzwords. You know, and the industry eats up buzzwords, and they seem to just jump out and jump around at us all the time. You know, I was talking to Huaweis just before this on Facebook, and I said, you know, we have too many fires and not enough firemen when it comes to kind of, you know, it's just the buzzwords go just out of control, and everyone talks about it, as opposed to anything, you know, that might be behind it. I don't know. Like, Eric, what do we actually know that's been stated? You know, it's doing query analysis and classification. Yeah, it's using machine learning, hopefully neural nets and stuff down the road, no one knows. But, you know, and it's done offline, tested and played with, pushed, then a data push, you know, aka what we're all used to. Beyond that, what do we really know?
Well, I mean, I think the hangout we did the other day, Ammon and I were both on that with Andre from, I'm not trying to say his last name now because I have to see the spelling in front of me to get it right, or to have a chance of getting it right. But, I mean, in any case, he was very forthcoming in a number of ways, and I think one of the most important things, and Ammon, correct me if I don't get this quite right, but actually Rand and Ammon and I had this debate going on in the chat about RankBrain isn't, you know, changing the Google, you know, algorithms, the other Google algorithms, and I think we got it right in the end, and Andre from Google, Google Dublin, more or less confirmed it, which is RankBrain might affect which Google algorithms are selected, but it's not changing the algorithms, and I'm going to cement this with an example, because we actually have data on this. In July, if you did a search in Google on tourist map of Medina, Malta, you got a result which was tourist sites about Medina, Malta. Today, you get the map in Google search results. Now, I don't know that that's RankBrain, but it does seem like a scenario where something happened where Google previously wasn't fully understanding that, that they actually wanted a map right then and there, and now they do. So I don't know if that's an illustration of the point that we talked about with Andre, Ammon, but it's the same, it's the right kind of thing where a better understanding of the user's query would cause, in this case, a local search algorithm to get applied where originally it did not. So it didn't change the local search algorithms,
right?
But it selected algorithms better fit.
It's trying to better understand the intent of the query and showing, you know, and again, down the road, search quality can test that with click-through rates and other things, but it's changing, it's better understanding the classification of the query in the sense of intent and trying to show things that might be more relevant than before. But again, how you test that's got to be clicked at or something.
The specifics are things like we know that the YMYL, your money or your life searches, have an extra degree of fact-checking and trust involved. You know, Google wants to be sure it's got that right. If it hadn't understood that query was financial in nature, it wouldn't be using that. And once the query rewriting understands that it suddenly is doing that. So it will change the way that the results are processed as well as understanding the query, but only because it understood the query. Another one would be with news search. We know that, you know, things change very quickly, and news search, when Google understands something to be about news, it downplays traditional link quality to a document. It's not so important that it's got thousands of links because you're looking for something new, you're looking for something that's just broken. What's fresh is the most important aspect of news. And of course, if it's fresh, it hasn't got time to have got many links to it yet. It's just come out. So
right.
That's, again, if it's suddenly understood that something was a quest for news, then it's going to change which parts of the algorithm are in play by better understanding that query.
Mm-hmm. So when I first started looking at RankBrain, one of the things I looked at was a patent that dealt with synonym substitution based upon context, and it looked at all the words in the query. If they tended to be a long query, it tried to understand what the actual intent behind that search was based upon all the words that people use to search with. I think that helps get a sense of how RankBrain is maybe changing around search results.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's part of it. There was another conversation I had, which was talking about same Google spokesperson, that the whole thing was about using language analysis across the web and pulling the language elements into high-dimensional vector space.
Well, again, yeah, that's you look at the word to-vec. I even found a paper on paragraph to-vec,
Right.
which the word to-vec makes more sense for like what they've told us about RankBrain, but the paragraph stuff is more of an extension of that. How to actually look at phrases, sentences, and entire paragraphs with that same predictive element and what we expect to see there, and so on and so on. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and there's the example that
Who knows what they do with the paragraph stuff?
yeah, there was the example that the sentence that Gary shared with me, which is how to get a 100% score in Super Mario without walkthrough. And he explained that before RankBrain, they ignored the word without, which definitively gets you the exact opposite result the user is querying for, because it's going to give you walkthroughs to help you get that 100% score, instead of telling you how you can go about getting it without a walkthrough. So that's only possible because they looked at the whole sentence.
So stop words are no longer stop words, really.
Well, not even stop words, Terry. Like the paragraph to vector stuff, which is again I haven't found any relative patents. It's a research paper they did, but when they were testing that stuff, interestingly enough, before they even started, they did some research and information retrieval tasks. But before they even did that, on IMDb, and for sentiment analysis, which could be a hint in itself. Again, that without changes the sentiment. You know, it not only changes the context of that search query he's talking about, it changes the actual sentiment of it, right? Of the desire. That without kind of plays into that. And so I thought it was interesting that they were testing the whole paragraph vector thing was actually on sentiment analysis more than information, straight up information retrieval tasks.
Interesting. They use that database too to look at, because you would see words like the office and the office are actually two different things. One is an entity for one.
Right.
Well, no, you could also have something like this is a badass movie. You know, is it a bad movie that has asses in it? Well, no. It's that colloquialism. It's that sentiment. You know, is it a porn? Is it a bad porn? It's got bad and ass in the sentence, right? So yeah, sentiment analysis. I think they've always had problems a bit with in testing, and the IMDb is probably a great place to do it. You know.
Right.
And this is another part that most of the papers I've read don't talk about entities at the same time. There's a certain amount of the vectorization that can help you identify entities or show you that it's referring to an entity as opposed to just using similar words that don't refer to an entity.
Even in the one patent on the word to vector stuff from Google, Ammon, they talked about treating entities as a single vector. New York City is not 3 words that we'd look at as 3 separate vectors. You know?
Right.
Except, of course, when it is. And I think, again, that's part of what we're seeing now, that sometimes it knows it is and sometimes it isn't, and the rest of the words are going to have to help you understand when that is.
Well, yeah, there's always, what you do in the weekend? I painted the White House, or I painted the White House.
Yeah.
Right.
I painted those white. Yeah.
And of course, that may be another reason that they struggle sometimes with different languages, because of course the structure of some is such that the differentiations we're used to aren't there. And that's again why machine learning is going to be so important. But it's also difficult, as Andre said in the Q&A we did, with some of the languages it's very difficult because the corpus of documents out there in those languages, there are some countries where the majority of documents produced are produced on a spam basis.
Right.
Labour is cheap, and certain companies have really dominated in that space. For a while, the Greek internet was filled with casino spam, because that was a very strong place for the casinos to start out. It's still some of the best black hat SEOs I know in the gaming space are from Greece. and it does affect the corpus of documents in Greek. It just does. So it is one of those things that I tried to get at this that Q&A, but you know, write better in your own language, and Google is able to pick that up. But at the moment, in languages where spammers are producing hundreds of thousands of auto-generated pages, and regular writers are creating a few hundred, you know, the wait is really taking time for Google's machine learning to deal with those languages.
Right, and it just lets people think that there's some bias in Ammon's statement. It's just that there's an absence of people producing quality content in those languages, because most likely they have so much commercial incentive to do it in other languages like English. It's not like you know, any other comment is being made here. It's just a fact of life that causes this scenario where there's so much spam, or such a large percentage of documents are spam, and that's Google's world that they're trying to deal with.
Well, you know, even in the research papers, they talked about, you know, when they ran the vector algos over 31 billion pages, they had an 75% improvement in quality. When they ran it over 6 billion, they only had like 62. So just like you're saying, the larger they found with the testing and stuff was actually the larger the corpus, the better it worked.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is very important. You know, when you think about what they're trying to do with it, the fact that the error margin decreases as the corpus increases, that's critical. That was a big part of the other day when we first started discussing this a couple of weeks ago, Dave. That was a big part of what got me thinking about where this could go down the road.
And if you consider all
or how likely any of it's to be implemented. Again, I'm reading patents and papers, so when I have to try and guess with my best judgment if something's going to be used or not, concepts like that enter the mind because it's saving them money, and which is a priority one in the search team, you know. So.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from webmasters is, you know, is we're not just talking about very small countries and things like that. Germany, you know, the German language is probably the third biggest around. It's going to be close. You know, you've got English, you've got French, you've got Spanish, you've got German. Even in German, the corpus isn't there to give it the same quality as English, because English has sort of become the lingua franca, the trade language of the world online. It just means that no other language is quite as good. French isn't bad. Spanish is a bit better. German, you do already start to see it suffering. So when you get down to Dutch and when you get down to some of the rarer Cyrillic languages and things like that, you know, it really does become more noticeable that Google struggles.
Well, and that UK English stuff, nobody speaks that. So.
You know, but almost like what you're saying about the corpus of low-quality documents for a given language. It almost takes me back to that Bing bot on Twitter again. If you've got a machine learning system that's only learning from low quality documents, well, it turns into that sort of, you know, Bing spam bot.
Right.
That kind of brings up a scary proposition too, Ammon. Are there any Welsh web pages out there? Because I just can't see Google going there.
Yes.
There are, but there isn't a Welsh keyboard, so you know it's there. It is there, but it's not huge. But then again, Welsh is one of those languages. It had died out as a spoken language. There were people who remembered bits of it, and they managed to gather all of those people together to recover the language.
Yeah, I read something a few months ago about the fact that it was now one of the bottom 5 in terms of volume of users, bottom 5 languages in the world, which surprised me. I thought it was still relatively common in its geographical, you know, limited geographical region, and even there, it's not that often used.
There's parts of Wales where it's used a lot. There are parts of Wales where you will rarely hear it. And yeah, but it's a language that had gone. There were no native speakers. There were only people who vaguely remembered it. and they reclaimed it from that point. It had been pushed out because the education system didn't reward it, didn't teach it, didn't use it in schools, and it was very difficult for children to pick it up.
So one of the things I think is interesting when you look at this whole landscape, right? And as you know, we've talked a little bit about the other articles that come out there, and making strong claims, and maybe you guys talked about this before. I apologize for having to forcibly been a bit late, but it's like you see these people talking about RankBrain taking over the whole algorithm, and it's like that anybody who has written anything like that doesn't actually understand. And I'm no expert, by the way, on this topic either, but I know enough to know that is so.
Don't worry, we dealt with the expert. We dealt with the expert tag before you got here. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
None of us are experts. We're good.
Well,
We're
yeah,
good.
and I'm wearing the non-expert tag proudly too. But anybody who is going to claim that somebody developed a machine learning algorithm to do that has no idea how complicated machine learning is. It's what they did with just improving query understanding and language analysis and pulling all that in the high-dimensional vector space is an amazing accomplishment. You know, it's a many, well, at least one, if not two or three.
But it's even so far. It's even so far off. Like, you know, I mean, I've spent a lot of time, like I said earlier, that this dragged me away from RankBrain, and you know, I started getting into neural nets and machine learning and vector spaces and things of that nature. But it, you know, it's even still very, you know, infantile right now compared to where it'll be. I like the idea of where it's going, but even the neural net stuff I've tried to get into and try to, you know, essentially understand how neurons are firing. You know, that orange and apple don't fire as many neurons as orange and car do because they're so juxtaposed as concepts in your mind. But you know, even then, we're at early days with this kind of stuff from anything I've studied. You know, I mean, Doc, you walked with this on me for the last 2 weeks, and it's still early days for anybody. It's fascinating, but it's still early.
Yeah.
You know, they were having problems with like word2vec, okay, that would put pairs strong and powerful close to each other as vectors for some reason. But when they expanded into the paragraph to vector stuff, they started to see different results to how their neural predictions were going to work, right? So, you know, I think that the other thing needs to be said is that anyone who's talking about that kind of stuff is, even the people writing this stuff are going, I'm not really sure. So,
yeah.
It's also one of those interesting things is that, you know, when we're talking about machine learning, the corpus of documents you get is so critical. If you think that Google struggled in the early days because they were mostly college geeks and computer guys, they had a much higher proportion of patents and official papers and things in their repertoire than most of us. So the kind of documents they would check it to find tended to be quite wordy, and you know, to this day we still say, oh well, longer pages always rank better. You know, it's not always true. There's still a little bit of that because it has to deal with everything. And I don't want a white paper that's 500 words long. You know, a white paper is supposed to be pretty significant. A science paper, a patent, is supposed to be pretty significant. And an algorithm that has to be able to return those, but also return that two-word quip that's a famous Einstein quote when I want it, is going to be, you know, a very complex beast. But think about if you've got a lot of academics, and you know, they're talking about Greek and Roman literature, Paris isn't going to be immediately recognized as the city in France. It's going to be seen as the mythology characters, and that kind of thing can become really important. The documents that you study are why machine learning is so difficult, and once it starts to go wrong, it's very difficult to get it back on track. Some parts of machine learning, a bit like some of those old computer games where something was really difficult and you had to save every time you did something right, because otherwise you'd lose all your progress if something went wrong, and you know, you're 2 hours back now.
Indeed, and you know, just to underscore that a little bit further, it's like they made this massive PR event out of, you know, solving the game Go, and you know, why did the whole machine learning community react to this being such a significant event. It's just one stinking board game. But it sort of really helps you understand how much we're dealing with here when we talk about machine learning, because the stats is that, first of all, we know, we believe there's 10 to the 100th atoms in the known universe, and we know that there's 10 to the 171st positions on a Go board. And solving that one little game where they could beat the current world champion 4 out of 5 games, it sort of illustrates that was such a big deal. Now imagine you have to solve problems that complex. You have to solve 10 million problems that complex now. 10 million more problems that complex. And they'll each take years of someone working on it. And that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. You know, I said, you know, as my journey into this started, you know, I was telling Ammon the other day that so many much led to robotics and things of that nature. You know, everyone's talking AI with information retrieval, but the real world, when you get into these neural nets and AI and NLP and all this stuff, really it's so information retrieval is a tiny piece. You know, you get led into the robotics and so many other places, and it's.
Yeah.
Thank God there's experts.
Yeah, we got to just find some.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
well, we almost were just going to start the show and go. We were almost going to start the show and go. Here's the 4 things we know about RankBrain. You can't optimize it to have a great day, you know. But we figured we'd fill up the whole hour.
It's one of those things, you know. A lot of the uses of AI are in things that we wouldn't even normally think of. Managing traffic around a city is something they would like machine learning and AI to be doing more of, when it can understand. Okay, there's been a small accident here. I've picked it up because it's on the police data, and that means I should now adjust the traffic signals in these 6 key areas of the city and avoid the traffic jam building up in the first place.
Right.
And those kind of things are things that machine learning will be able to do, because it will learn, when I do this, it moves the problem here, and it doesn't actually solve it. But when I do this and this actually does solve it. So, you know, that kind of really complex modelling of the time of day and how many streets are involved and what other street problems there may be and what the weather's like and what day of the week it is, you know, it gets to be a very complex problem. Machines are very good at crunching huge amounts of data. That's where they will always beat us.
Yeah.
I just, what Dave said about optimization, not in old school way, but just like universal search, you could optimize it by identifying what's needed in that server, what a user could use. SEO is becoming more about understanding what content is needed for what and getting that into the SERP. The days of putting up a few links and stuffing keywords, that's gone. It's becoming a profession where, you know, we could be proud of what we're doing, because not just anybody can do it now. Sorry, that's my personal opinion. Like,
it's one of the points we were talking with Paul Hart on Twitter, and he was saying, well, you know, actually, don't worry too much about the patents. He said to Bill, it's much more important to study the raters guidelines, and to a large extent, that's what we're talking about. Ultimately, if you want to head Google off at the pass, aim to please the user, because that's who Google are aiming to please.
Right, because there's data out there.
It makes our clients money, Ammon. You know, identifying customer needs is still a big part of what we do. A lot of SEOs don't want to admit that, but if you're a good SEO, you're doing that too.
And that doesn't mean the light.
But I think
that doesn't mean
Eric,
it's all about
I think
content marketing.
I keep going. I keep going back to something Eric was saying earlier, as far as there could be a component of this that is not only reclassifying or classifying a query differently, but it's also, like you were intimating, that and because Terry just brought up universal, it's also keying in different elements that may not have come back for that query in the past. So again, you don't really rank for RankBrain per se. You still want to be paying attention to a SERP and your universals, what's coming in, if it's news or images or whatever. So you're still really just doing strong SEO the way you've always done it. This just buying a query and potentially pulling in other universal elements that may have not have been there for that query before, right, Eric? So you're still not really changing how you're doing things.
Well, right, or you could put it that Google is better matching you for things they should have matched you for in the first place. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And what I was trying to get at before is, we're not saying technical SEO is dead. Far from it. Technical SEO is more important than ever because you still need to understand the limits of what it can do at the moment. But that said, yeah, it's about the marketing side. Search is growing up. Search marketing is actually marketing at last instead of tricking people.
Right. No, I remember those days, but I won't go into the details of those days because that would take far longer than the remaining few minutes we have. So.
No, it's okay. See, I was about to say some names there and make some jokes, but I won't. I was about to say, if we wanted a show like that, we could always invite. Nah, I'll just leave that blank.
Yeah, I'm sure they ain't doing very much, Dave.
But yeah, again, I think your strongest practices are still. I don't think this is the earth shaker that it was. I think folks at the end of the day, some people wrote some pretty crazy posts that had just sort of discovered it after 6 months, and some of us just reacted to it, and even myself probably should have. It's always the call when you're out there. You guys all know this because you do podcasts and conferences and everything else. That do you highlight something to put out a fire? Or do you ignore it and hope it goes away? And unfortunately, half the time I feel I have to, say something. But that just brings more light to it, and once that light crap, and it just blows out of proportion. And I think that's what we saw with this to a large degree.
Well,
this was out here last October, and nobody cared.
The thing we need to make sure you learn out of all this is that there's always going to be something wrong on the internet. You can't fix it all.
That is absolutely true. There's a lot of the things that we, say today, and people run off and get excited about as if it's the first time they've heard it, because maybe it is. But they're actually things we were saying back in 2003, 2004. Manipulating links. We knew the issues with it back in 2003, 2004. At the time, it worked, but it was seen as short term, and I think sometimes people who weren't there think, it was rife and everyone did it. No, lots of people did it, but they knew it was short term. They had a plan B ready, most of them, not all of them. And there's a lot of things that are like that. It's the search engines have caught up to what they were planning to do in 2003, 2004. These aren't brand new ideas. They're new ways of getting there. But ultimately,
a bunch of people get penalized by Google over the weekend for linking to bad neighborhoods.
Yes.
Which was the blog post that Google specifically highlighted this in a blog post 6 weeks ago. So it's not like they didn't warn anybody.
Yeah,
right.
But I guess it's the Matt Cutts syndrome. It's like, do we believe what they say, or is this all just a
Smarties blog? That's basically what Doc got nailed for, right, Doc?
Exactly, and just like when I got nailed for it 2.5, almost 3 years ago, they actually 3 times over an 18-month period warned about it. So they're actually pretty good about warning about things. It's just nobody knows how to friggin' listen.
Unfortunately, the people who most need the advice are the ones most invested in the status quo, and they don't want to change. And I warned a company I worked for years ago. They had a link network. I warned them that Google's been targeting these. It's been working on it. You've got maybe 6 months. If they hit you, if you've still got this in 6 months, it's going to kill you. It's going to cripple you. And they liked it, and they thought about it, and then they went away, and they didn't actually change anything because they were still making money off it. And 6 months later, all of their clients tanked, all of them, because they'd used their link network.
Something you do, but you just shouldn't bother.
All right, before we go, Frank Watson wants to know, does schema impact predictive nature? I'll go with who knows. Anyone else?
Yeah.
It can, but it's indirect. you know, it's one of those things. The algorithms these days, everything plays into everything. Schema can massively help the search engines to understand entities, and we've already talked about the fact that entities can help the Google, you know, the algorithms understand intent of a query. So yes, schema affects something that affects something that affects the results.
If the signal
Eric's got to hold on. Let's just let Eric get to his meeting first, then we can just keep babbling on. Eric, thank you as always. Pleasure, man.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Good to see you all as always.
Keep putting out fires out there, son. Keep putting out the fires.
We'll try our best. We'll watch you do it too. See you guys.
See you now.
Take care, man. All right, go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
If the signals that you're sending with schema are consistent with the signals you're sending with the rest of the content on your pages, so that you're not sending mixed signals, you're not confusing the AI, you're not causing it to get concerned about the actual message you're sending, then it can strengthen that message. Absolutely.
Bill?
Like a consistent NAP would have for local stuff, a consistent entity representation from your site outwards and back inwards is going to strengthen things like authority and expertise and whatever.
Right.
We're kind of talking about machine learning. Dave showed me a paper, or maybe it was a patent, where they were taking the schema on pages and using machine learning to run that over docs to learn what labels people were using without schema doing the same thing. So basically reverse engineering it and comparing it to other documents. That showed me how powerful it really can be by putting schema on your pages. That was pretty eye-opening for me.
There are a couple different ways of doing artificial intelligence. One of them involves using structured data, using things that are labeled. You have pages where they've actually gone in, labeled parts of speech for different words, and they want to be able to develop processes where they don't need to do that labeling, that tagging of parts of speech. You know, something they're working towards.
Yeah.
And with poor implementation of schema, right, it's also making schema maybe not, they can learn from it and apply it to where there is no schema. That's my point.
One of the things that Google have, you know, made obvious to us many times is that the adoption, no matter how well they publicize something, take author tags, you know, authorship. Still, by the end of that, by the time they decided to kill it, the amount of sites that were using it and using it correctly was a drop in the ocean of all of the stuff that was out there.
Even alt attributes on images, it's still the same thing. I saw something here not too long ago. They only see about 12% of the images have alt attributes across the entire web. And how long has that been being talked about? And nobody, you know, very few people have actually implemented.
Yeah, of course, sometimes that's deliberate because there are still people using spacer images and unimportant images that shouldn't have much alt text. Although, again, it should be marked up that it doesn't need it, because otherwise, of course, the screen reader just reads out the file name.
Right.
If you don't put alt text, it should have an empty alt rather than no alt.
Right.
So anybody out there interested in SEO, also look at accessibility because the search engines have to.
Let's see. Frank has another obviously awesome question. Can RankBrain pick the winners of horse races? Frank, the answer to your question is yes, after the race. I don't even know what he's doing. It's got to be late there. The beer's flowing. Something. Not sure what Frank's doing.
Well, certainly, eventually they want machine learning to be able to do all those kind of things. A machine-learned system for predicting races would be a lot better at it than people. There are people who swear by their systems, and their systems are nowhere near as complicated or as able to be adapted on the fly as machine learning can manage, where it can know the exact temperature, the exact amount of precipitation, so the exact state of the ground, the exact track record of each horse.
That's kind of what Watson does, right? Watson is much like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, Watson is much more, to me, Watson always seems much more fact-based.
Yes.
It's more of a knowledge graph in a way than what Google's doing, which is, more about the human understanding.
Like a huge game of Jeopardy.
Yeah. Oh, really? Did this hangout actually totally needed the preface that Bill gave us anyways? Because I had this feeling, we're still in the air for a few more minutes, folks. We're just showing you what the green room looks like. I had this feeling that, even after we ate up 15 minutes with the direction of the AI and everything, we got to like the 45 minute point. I could tell we already running out of stuff to say, because that's literally how little we know about RankBrain. Like we could have, this could have been a 10-minute hangout.
Well,
here's what we know. Here's what we think. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
There is one direction we could still touch on, and that's where it might go in the future.
Well, and again, I don't think it's RankBrain itself that I think in those terms of. You know what I mean? I think more in terms of, again, where do vectors lead us? Where does, machine learning lead us? Where does any of this lead? You know what I mean? Like, I remember the very famous set of historical patents got us thinking back in 04 or whatever, and so you started thinking where that would lead, and, everything that...
sorry, Dave. To some point...
No, go ahead.
To some extent, there's different parts of RankBrain, too, and some part of it is just discovering new queries and deciding what to do with them.
I'd almost say it's discovering new ways to answer queries. Again, they don't discover the new queries; they get given to Google. So it's just discovering new ways to answer that question.
That's what I mean. Like discovery. Oh, we got a new one here. What are we going to do with it? Type deal, right? Because I kind of wonder, there isn't, when you look at there's RankBrain, but there's so many other components, like Ammon said, like the Raiders Guide. That's important to this as well. And then you have Mr. Haber's talk on how Google works, where I've been wrapping my head around the process from crawl to it actually getting to RankBrain. And, what are the processes there? Some of the things I'm thinking about is, at what point does the source go away? Right? Because, once you kind of use the actual HTML and stuff for your weighting and whatnot and grab the attributes that you actually use, do you really want to keep that around? And how are they rendering the document afterwards? Those are the things I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around.
If you want an idea of where it's headed, for a start, I'd say that where we're at is where Google started. This is what they were aiming for at the start when they talked about organising the world's information. They're getting to be particularly good at it, and it's still only the start. We do know that. My whole interest in the internet was that I saw this as being the most important invention since the last really important invention. The last important invention was the printing press. Before that, there was no mass education because there was no need for it. You were never going to see a book. You were certainly never going to touch a book. So why teach you to read? It was only with the invention of the printing press that then suddenly all the churches had Bibles. Once they'd sold all the Bibles to the churches, what's the next thing we can do? Oh, I know, we should tell everyone that it's their Christian duty to own their own Bible. Everyone should have the Word of God nearby. And that's where the idea of Sunday school came from. Is the idea became, yes, everyone should own their own copy of the Bible, everyone should have this source, and therefore everyone needed to learn to read. And the first free education for the masses was Sunday school, the churches teaching you to read so you could read the Bible in your own time. If you think of that, would we have had an Einstein?
Before that, would people even be able to afford a book? Because it'd be so expensive to get one, you know what I mean? Normal.
Before the printing press, a Bible took years for a whole monastery to make. One. So, They were very expensive. If you owned 3 books, you were a library. They were handmade, they were handwritten, they were handcrafted. You know, it really was a...
Well, we've officially jumped the shark now. All right, we made our way to the Bible. Okay, I like it.
Well, we're actually talking about the same thing.
We've definitely gone off the rails now, boys. Congratulations, as we always do.
Print was the first internet. Print was the first time I could have my information spread further than I could shout it. Once literacy was there, the idea of pen pals and being able to swap documents with people you didn't meet was possible. And scholars exchanged letters, and a lot of the classic old research science that we know actually came about from communication between scholars in different countries and different universities. The internet is supposed to make this happen in real time. I don't have to put together a book and then wait for a postman to get it halfway around the world. I can hit publish and it's there. It's over in Germany. It's in Johannesburg. It's in China. And somebody with the other half of the puzzle that's been going on in my head can pick that up and run with it. The speed of invention picks up. Unfortunately,
that was a very, very important change in the world, but I think that it goes even further, because before, when you had that book was basically a container of knowledge. And it was a way, if you could convey it intelligently to where I could understand it intelligently, you conveyed your knowledge to me. But now we're in a transition stage where we're not looking for containers to store knowledge. We're looking for agents to perform tasks. And Google is making progress on that. Even to the extent of self-driving vehicles. I mean, it's all, this AI is starting to permeate through all aspects of our life, and in ways that has had tremendous benefit. Certainly there's also potential abuse, but it's had tremendous benefit. Look at how much knowledge is available to the average person anywhere in the world if they just have an internet connection or a smartphone. It's amazing.
Okay, well, I'm going to take this off to the green room now, folks. Anybody still watching, listening, there's a bunch of you out there. The link is on the event page. Come and join us and talk about the Bible and more. So I think we've come to a consensus that RankBrain is such a fascinating topic that all these smart people here are thinking about that we couldn't really get past an hour. Really, we can get past 40-minute mark. So that's how much you need to care about RankBrain. Have yourselves a great day. And my daughter has the sound of a flushing toilet going on in the background. I think that is perfect. Great end of the show. The toilet flushing, I like it. All right, well, that's it, folks, and we'll be here if you want to join us. Gentlemen, thank you so much, and we're never doing RankBrain ever again, ever. Any show, ever.